Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Sundravihari Jaya Radha Madhava Sundravihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Vishnupada Paramahamsa Purijakacharya Shata Shata Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Purijakacharya Shata Shata Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Granth Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, Talks between Narada and King Prachinhabharhi. Text number 57. Samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas tat krito mahan rishayopi hi muryanti yatra nedriya vritaya samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas krito mahan rishayopi hi muhyanti yatra nindriya vritaya samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas krito mahan rishayopi hi muhyanti yatra nindriya vritaya samshaya doubt, atra here, tu but, me my, vipra o brahmana, sanchina cleared, tatkrita done by that, mahan very great, rishaya the great sages, api even, he certainly, muhyanti are bewildered, yatra where, na not, indriya of the senses, vritaya activities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. My dear Brahmana, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand that even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. Purport. King Barhishman was engaged in different types of sacrifice for elevation to the heavenly planets. People generally are attracted by these activities, and very rarely is a person attracted by devotional service, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms. Unless one is very, very fortunate, he does not take to devotional service. Even the so-called learned Vedic scholars are bewildered by devotional service. They are generally attracted to the rituals for sense gratification. In devotional service, there is no sense gratification, but only transcendental loving service to the Lord. Consequently, the so-called priests engaged in sense gratification do not very much like devotional service. The Brahmanas, the priests, have been against this Krishna consciousness movement since it began with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, the priestly caste lodged complaints to the Qazi, the magistrate of the Mohammedan government. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to lead a civil disobedience movement against the propaganda of the so-called followers of Vedic principles. These people are described as karmajada smartas, which indicates that they are priests engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. It is here stated that such people become bewildered, rishayopi hi muhyanti. To save oneself from the hands of these karmajada smartas, one should strictly follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarva dharman prityaja mamikam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayami masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Om Ganataramantasya Gananjanashvakaya Chakshamitamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are getting here where to the point in the narration of the talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi, where the king has heard the instructions and the allegories of Narada Muni and has asked any doubts that he's had and had them properly answered by Narada Muni. And he brings up in this verse that basically what you're saying is different than what I have heard before. Your instructions are not just different, they're in contradiction to the instructions of those teachers who've engaged me in fruitive activities and karma kanda. And I can't help but thinking of basically all of the teachers that we have today in the wider society, because it would be very hard to find any teacher outside of the Krishna consciousness movement, of course, that engages us in anything but fruitive activities. Pretty much all of the instructions that we have is not how to get free of the body, but how to get further entrenched in bodily activities. You would be hard pressed to find anybody in public schools, private schools, that is not a devotee, who teaches that we are not the body, which is the ABCs, the basics of spiritual understanding. On the contrary, they will teach things like the body came from the brain, or the mind our consciousness came from the brain, that we appeared by random chance in the process of natural selection, and all of these things which are set the stage to engage us more in fruitive activities. And then we gain instructions in the different modes of nature. Some instructions are just in the mode of ignorance for immediate gratification. I know in high society, so-called, there's a whole science to pairing wine with different types of food. With this type of abominable thing that you're going to eat, you pair this type of wine, this other abominable thing that you're going to eat. There's this type of wine, and all sorts of other things of how to enjoy yourself right at this moment without regards to the future. And some instructions are in the mode of passion. You get this a lot with the, I guess, motivational speaker or self-help people, how to get a good job, get a good family situation, get a good physique, to try to attract the opposite sex. And even in the mode of goodness, which might be instructions on long-term gratification, you could say, or even instructions on simple living. Unless it's connected to Krishna consciousness, all of these are instructions in fruitive activities. This is all really that we are engaged by the various teachers of society in, which doesn't just include the teachers that we go to school and learn that 2 and 2 make 4, but any person or entity or group that is pushing a certain way of life or a certain way of living is a teacher that's engaging us in fruitive activities. And by this, we want to, in some sense, elevate ourselves to the heavenly planets. Just like the king here, King Prachinabarhi, was engaged in different types of sacrifices for elevation to the heavenly planets. Of course, in today's day and age, there's hardly any idea of these types of sacrifices or of literal elevation to the heavenly planets. But we want to, we seek to elevate ourselves to a type of life or lifestyle that is found on the heavenly planets by these different processes of fruitive activities. We think if I just situate my life according to the instructions of one of these teachers, then I will be situated in a very nice position, and I will have all sorts of sense gratification. So people tend to attach themselves to one of these teachers, which of course the process is to attach yourself to a teacher, but if one attaches oneself to a material teacher, then one ends up becoming further entangled in fruitive activities rather than escaping them. One example that I've heard before is, the ideas of the scientists and philosophers, or people who are interested in those sorts of things as well. If you go to a random person on the street, just an average Joe, they might have, a few reasons for being Maya. Maybe they really like to eat meat, or this reason or that reason. But if you go to somebody who's interested in philosophy, oh my God, they have a whole web of ideas of staying in Maya because, I read this philosopher, and Nietzsche says this and Carl Jung says that. And actually, in one sense, the great sages of today are people who are considered to be the great sages of today, are the scientists and philosophers. Are wise people, or at least knowledgeable. So we should follow what they say. We should follow the science, is a phrase that we've heard repeated often in the past few years. And in many ways, they fulfill the position of what the great sages, filled previously. Even through many political turmoils, for example, just like the great sages in Vedic times were able to go from place to place, go anywhere. Even during the world wars, during the Cold War, scientists were able to travel to and from scientific conferences more or less unimpeded. Of course, sometimes there were issues because these days the respect given to scientists and philosophers is very great. But what is the actual caliber of these people? If you look at many scientists, many of them are openly atheistic, or for those who thought about this, maybe at best deistic. God set the universe in motion, and then he wound up the clockwork universe, and then just took his hands off, and it runs according to natural law. There are very few scientists that I've met outside of devotee scientists, of course, that have a traditional religious view where God created the universe and still interacts with it in a real manner. Actually, most scientists I've met would probably be described as apathetic, as in they haven't thought enough about the issue to care one way or another. But still, these intellectuals of today propound different goals of life, even though they're bewildered by the goals of life due to bad instruction and also due to sinful activities. Pretty much anytime there's a conference in math or science, I'm assuming other fields as well, but that's just what I've experienced of. There's the conference, and then there's the conference after party, where all sorts of sinful activities go on. And there isn't this idea that we find in the Vedic literature that what I am able to understand is dependent on the way that I live my life. I can go party it up at the conference banquet, and then the next day I can talk about the nature of the universe, the meaning of life, whatever I want, and one has no connection with the other. But actually, they say that the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. What is the actual result of the philosophies that these people hold? Actually, what comes to mind are the existentialists, which, for those unaware, they were philosophers in the 1900s, that their philosophy, briefly, was basically the universe either has no meaning or has no meaning that humans can understand. And sometimes they framed this as a very way. But what was the actual result in their personal lives of that philosophy? Pretty much all of them drank basically to get through the day. Some did even harder types of intoxication. Others slept around a lot. So there's the result of such atheistic or nihilistic even philosophies of life, while we see, of course, the devotees are always happy. So in one sense, yes, the great sages today are considered the scientists and philosophers, in kind of, I guess, the capacity of having knowledge, but also the sages in Vedic times not only had knowledge, but were responsible for kind of setting the standards or giving the highest knowledge to the rest of society. And in that way, the people who nowadays kind of set the standards for in behavior and worldview even is the media, particularly entertainment. Just by watching television, for example, so many ideas are injected into our heads, things that we might never have thought before. And because when given in the form of entertainment, these ideas aren't actually argued one way or another. It's not like somebody turns a debate going on between philosophers of two different camps. No, it's given in the form of stories that have these philosophies embedded within them. So they sneak past the defenses of the people watching. And in all of these ways, they can, the people who make the entertainment can push whatever ideas they want, even ideas that very silly or outlandish when one thinks about it. One, I guess, example that I've heard before is that actually, just give a basic example. Deaths by people jumping off of things that are too high have increased over, this study was from a while ago, but since the advent of television and as it has been off of tall places have increased, not because of an increase in suicidality, but because they see on TV in these action shows that, to get away from the bad guy, or maybe, the villain is running from the cops or whatever, and they leap off the ledge because it's, very exciting for, the action scene. And if you actually look at the ledge, they never would have survived the fall. But, that makes for good TV, but people watch it and then they think, oh, I can, survive that. So if they're running from something or just try to look cool, they jump off something and end up, breaking their bones or even dying. So just a, basic example of the ways that entertainment injects these weird ideas into our minds. And these different stages, either the more academic or intellectual side, or those involved in entertainment, are, as it says in the purport, opposed to devotional service, because it goes against their own way of life. In devotional service and reading Shastra, we say, focus on Krishna's senses. But the philosophy that is promulgated today is focus on your own senses. Practically the philosophy that's been promoted since time immemorial is, look out for number one. Maybe if you're a magnanimous person, you care about the people around you also, your friends and family. And basically all of the mainstream philosophies, viewpoints these days are in this direction. And when somebody goes against this sense gratificatory lifestyle, this materialistic lifestyle, they are very strongly opposed. we read about in this purpose about Lord Chaitanya when he started the movement, the priestly class complained to the government at the time to try to get him to stop his preaching because they were preaching, the priestly class was preaching still on the material platform, even though superficially the priestly class, the Smarta Brahmanas, and Lord Chaitanya were of the same religion, so to speak. They one was focused more on the bodily platform and kind of the social order, while of course Lord Chaitanya came to give devotional service. Same thing, I was talking with somebody the other day about Jesus, and actually during the time he was alive or on the planet, there's so many people popping up here and there claiming to be the Messiah because they were under Roman rule at the time. And but the priests who had become overly ritualistic and materialistic, they didn't care so much about all of these false messiahs, all of these messiahs popping up who wanted to change the social order. But as soon as somebody came along that was preaching devotional service and saying, stop this materialism in the name of religion, then they thought, oh, this person must die. So the entire modern society is based around this materialistic way of life. So we must show a higher way of living, one that is satisfying, but also based around Krishna, and in a natural and non-exploitative relationship with the other parts of Krishna's energy. And one can show by one's own personal example of gaining the higher taste. As I mentioned earlier, they say that the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. So if we show people that there actually is a higher taste in devotional service, then hopefully we can attract the mass of people, or at least many people, and help to fight against this materialistic philosophy that has so bewildered society at large. So I'll stop here. I still have a few minutes before Guru Puja. Questions or comments? All right. If not,
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Jai. I just thank you for a wonderful class this morning.
Thank you.
I was thinking about the ideas that these ideas are projected in the media, such as TV and those things through TV series that engages so many people in various ideas such as consumerism and so on and so forth. And I was just thinking about how they keep people engaged over these long periods of times by having these series that engages our senses in terms of family and feeling connected in a way that is so against the ideal of recognizing the supreme personality of Godhead. So that's all I was just thinking about as you were talking about some of these things this morning. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yeah, on the point of TV series, I mentioned in a class before that actually they did studies where they put people in an MRI and showed people pictures of their best friends and pictures of characters from their favorite TV series, and it's the exact same neurological response. So neurochemically, watching your series gives you the same kick as seeing your best friends. All right. Are there any other? Oh, yeah. All right. There's no more comments. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Shri Guru Chara Padma Kevala Bhakti Sarma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sarma Bandhamuri Sarada Bandhamuri Sarada Prasad Someday, bye, Bhavatoria. Jai Krishna Bhakti Hoya. Te Krishna Bhakti Hoya. Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Shri Tete Koriya Vakya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Shri Tete Koriya Vakya Natoriyo Manesha Natoriyo Manesha Shakti Utama Gati Shri Guru Charane Gati Utama Gati Jai Prasare Pure Sada Jai Prasare Pure Sada Chakshu Dana Diva Jame Jame Prabhu Se Divyan Here Prakashito Divyan Here Prakashito Prema Bhakti Ahate Avidya Vinasa Jate Prema Bhakti Ahate Avidya Vinasa Jate Vedagaya Paracharito Vedagaya Paracharito Guru Madhuna Sindhu Padma Bandhu Lokanath Lokarajivana Lokarajivana Aha Prabhu Korodaya Deha More Padachaya Aha Prabhu Korodaya Deha More Padachaya Eveja Tribhuvana Eveja Tribhuvana Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashita Shita Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashita Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srinivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srinivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,